I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the copyright claim that takes your monetization. I am... Not keeping this bit up. You guys waited long enough for this. Let's just cut to the chase. Or should I say...
Let's get dangerous.
Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About. Today, let's talk about the Ducktales episode, The Duck Knight Returns. Hey, remember way back in Beware the Buddy system, where it was revealed that in the Ducktales reboot, Darkwing Duck was a TV show? I bet you do, because ever since that glorified cameo, fans have speculated wildly about how this little tidbit could give us an actual Darkwing Duck. Maybe this is a jet fusion situation where he's a TV hero and secretly an actual superhero working for Shush. Maybe he's a washed-up recluse who becomes a hero through some extraordinary circumstances. The theories and scenarios were endless. Then, practically out of nowhere, in the middle of some of the biggest developments and introductions of DuckTales 2017, we got an episode completely dedicated to establishing and introducing Darkwing Duck to Duckburg. And you know it's a big episode because they severely chopped down the theme song to make time for all of the action and danger. This has by far been the most requested DuckTales review and what I've been wanting to cover for so long. And now, it's time. Let's dive right into The Duck Knight Returns. Launchpad attends an event with Darkwing Duck's former star, Jim Starling, when they discover that a Darkwing Duck movie is in production. When it doesn't turn out to be what either of them want, Jim recruits Launchpad to fix the film so he can star in it, and in the process, Launchpad discovers a true hero. Okay, we've got a lot to unpack here, but let's start with the surface level bits. First off, again, this series really gets social media in a way a lot of cartoons don't, even at this quick little glance of it, so that's always nice to see. And I'm sure not everyone loved it, but I found the gag of Launchpad fainting whenever Jim was around really funny, especially in the car. Gets over it pretty quickly though. But the biggest part of this opening is our first introduction to the star of Darkwing Duck, Jim Starling, who is pretty in line with one of DW's most well-known character traits. While Darkwing Duck had his noble and caring traits, he was also a glory hog, becoming a hero for the fame and recognition he thought it would bring him. But it didn't, because he's hilariously inept at being a superhero. And the DuckTales crew transferred that character trait in a really interesting way by making Jim a washed-up actor and the star of a show that hardly anybody remembers. It's a clever interpretation. But of course, what elevates his personality into something really entertaining is what did the first time. Jim Starling being played by original Darkwing, veteran voice actor, and every millennial's childhood, Jim Cummings, whose performance is just as magnificent as it always is. And the news of a Darkwing Duck movie is very exciting for both him and Launchpad.
Ah, cool! A big budget reboot of a thing I loved as a kid! Those are always great!
Too obvious. And it's being produced by Scrooge, from a studio that mostly produces safety videos that come with visual gag posters, all starring Donald, which is odd to me. I thought instructional videos were more Goofy's thing. And that logo from McDuck Studios looks awfully familiar.
You keep making up, go!
But boy, I tell you, they have so much fun with the ideas that come with pitching and rebooting a beloved property. The highlight is hands down the director, Alistair Borswan, trying to make a dark, gritty, existential look at Darkwing Duck. In a post-Dark Knight world, the satire here is absolutely hilarious and painfully accurate. The pearls were what really got me. But if I'm honest, I'd pay good money to see a Darkwing Duck movie directed by Edgar Wright. Hashtag release the Borswan cut. Part of me feels like, in this day and age, each reaction to this trailer could make for a video on their own, but I think I could sum it up by this overarching element the episode keeps coming back to, that everyone has their own definition of a great reboot. There's people like Borswan who want to use the material as a vehicle to present more powerful themes, or Scrooge who wants a simple good versus evil that will appeal to the masses and turn a profit, Dewey who winds up taking over the project, who just wants to throw a bunch of cool stuff at the wall in a world of superheroes regardless of if it makes sense, or Jim, and to an extent Launchpad, who want to capture the spirit of the original without changing anything, even the star. At the time, I was both confused and fascinated with how this episode approaches this premise, especially being a reboot itself. Eventually I realized that the episode never really takes a side on what makes the ideal reboot, because the answer is different depending on who you ask. Using DuckTales as an example, some viewers viewers are fans of the original and some aren't. Some people love it unconditionally, some don't think it represents its history well at all, and some like it a lot but are open to acknowledging its faults like any other property. Audiences are different, especially with a reboot or an adaptation, where you're both trying to bring in a new audience and an old one that's already attached to an idea of what the world and character should be. The ideas of what each character thinks will make this movie succeed definitely provides laughs, but not in a thing bad way, but rather thing exists. Approaches to adaptation has become a favorite topic of mine over the last couple of years, so the way the episode looks at people's perspectives at this reboot is really fascinating and pretty accurate to me. But Jim won't stand for it and recruits Launchpad to help him save the movie and make him, the one true Darkwing Duck, the star. On a side note, did he just have that costume on him? Like, did he have it with him at the signing, or is it a Superman situation where it was under his clothes this whole time? Not sure which one I prefer, honestly. This is definitely the point where it's clear that Jim is willing to go pretty far to take back his role in this movie. He's over the top and maybe a bit extreme in his methods to reclaim his fame. While we'll find out what exactly is going on later, this behavior isn't really that out of character for those familiar with Darkwing Duck. Like I said, being a glory hog was kind of his defining character flaw, and after this episode aired, I did go back and rewatch some of the original series, where I noticed that there were times where this behavior went a bit too far, much like in the second act of this episode. Most of the unsettling feelings you get from Jim's actions in this part come from Launchpad's reluctance towards his plan to lock up the new actor and take his role back. He has his hesitations, but goes along with it because he still believes in Darkwing Duck. So he goes ahead and tries to trap the new actor. Okay, I'm just gonna spoil this right here. This guy is Drake Mallard. I know that's not revealed until the end of the episode, but it's gonna be way easier to talk about him if I can use his name. As much as Jim fits a lot of the more negative and comedic traits of the original Darkwing Duck, we see slowly that Drake has the makings of a real hero. His story is an inspiring one that I'm sure a lot of people watching could relate to. I know I could. Despite starring in a movie that might be seen as less than perfect, Drake loves Darkwing Duck and what he stands for. To stand up for what's right, even if you're not the strongest out there. To have confidence in yourself, even when no one else does. And no matter how many times you're beaten down, to get back up. Darkwing Duck changed his life, and he wants to represent the character to do that for someone else. Which, while this episode never really takes a side on what makes an ideal adaptation, may be the most admirable mission when participating in one. All told, through these adorable and magnificent comic panels done by Mike Pereza Jr., who worked on both the original Ducktales and Darkwing Duck. It's only a few panels, but they are a wonderful and creative way to present Drake's story. This helps Launchpad and us see Drake in a new light. He loves this hero just as much as Launchpad does, and wants to inspire others just as they were by the original show. And if he loves Darkwing Duck as much as Launchpad, then how can he be the bad guy that Jim says he is? It really is amazing how much the episode endears the audience to Drake before we figure out who he is. For the most part, it's just they're showing what a true caring fan he is without too much hinting at what he would eventually become. And him geeking out with Launchpad over Darkwing is a ton of fun to watch. Launchpad and Drake become quick friends and set out to find Jim to see if Jim and Drake can work together to create the ultimate Darkwing Duck movie. But Jim ain't having none of that. He locks Drake in a closet, he's going suspiciously cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and heads to the set to film the final... Oh my god, Megavolt's dressed like Pain. Oh, I can't take the satire. To film the final fight, where Jim really starts to go off the rails to make sure this comeback goes the way he wanted to. Thankfully, we have a new terror that flaps in the night, who steps in right on cue.
I am Darkwing Duck!
You know, as much as I prefer the turtleneck button-up jacket combo of the old look, this redesign has grown on me. Drake and Launchpad work together to stop Jim and save everyone on set from being electrocuted from this very real laser cannon. What the hell kind of production is this? But life or death situation aside, Drake and Launchpad seem to be into it.
This is so cool!
I know.
It feels so right!
Yeah, I think that's how we were all feeling at this point in the episode, which gives us an awesome and amusing Darkwing versus Darkwing fight. There are so many amazing things going on during this confrontation. Where do I even begin? Well, I guess with the action itself. It's the perfect blend of genuine hand-to-hand combat and suspense, and captures the physical, sporadic animated comedy the original series excelled at. The parallels to not just Borswan's vision of a hero fighting his darker impulses, but the cliffhanger to the Darkwing Duck series of this universe, where DW discovers an evil version of himself, makes this fight not just fun and exciting, but layered on multiple levels. Oh, also, there's this shot that many people pointed out is ripped right from this famous Flash comic cover where he meets another Flash.
Layers, layers, layers.
As fun as the fight between two wannabe heroes is, and it is a lot of fun, this episode also highlights the best characteristics of another, Launchpad. I've been on the fence about Launchpad in the past, and on some level I still am. It really depends on the episode. Like a lot of comic relief characters, Launchpad's appeal, or lack of appeal, really comes down to just how dumb a writer is willing to make him for the sake of a joke, whether to be clever about it or go for the cheap jokes. But also, like a lot of characters like Launchpad in ongoing shows, sometimes their best moments come from when they get the main focus. That was the case in Beware the Buddy System, which for a while was my favorite episode, and it's most certainly the case here. The Duck Knight Returns highlights more than any other episode what Launchpad does best: believe in others, sees the best in people he admires even when they don't, standing by others unconditionally and striving to be nothing but a positive influence. And that's exactly what he does here. Even after everything Jim has done and was about to do, Launchpad still steps in to try and make him see what he sees in Jim and Darkwing Duck. And when all is said and done and Drake feels lost, he reminds Drake of the philosophy he shared with Launchpad about what Darkwing Duck means to him, sees his potential, and encourages him to do this for real. It gets sort of buried in all the excitement over the fact that we now have a real, genuine Darkwing Duck in the Ducktales universe, but we wouldn't have that without Launchpad. Actually, come to think of it, we probably wouldn't have either of the superheroes in this show if it wasn't for Launchpad.
Gizmo Duck does it.
I am better than Gizmo Duck.
Debatable, but those two having their own adventure is by far the thing I'm hoping to see the most in season 3. This adventure was hands down Launchpad's shining moment in the series so far. Too bad all the footage of the fight was lost thanks to Dewey. Wait, can you film over digital files? Either way, it's probably for the best that Scrooge shut it down. The insurance rates on this production probably went through the roof after this mess. But as we all know, something pretty incredible came out of all this. It wasn't in the way anyone expected back when Darkwing Duck was first mentioned on Ducktales' first season, but fans seem to have welcomed this new version of Drake with open arms. And I cannot wait to see the rest of his journey because this origin was absolutely incredible. It's a very creative reimagining of some of the most well-remembered traits of the original Drake Mallard. The voice work of Chris, Diamantopoulos, Mickey Mouse, is a great successor to Jim Cummings, and the transformation of someone wanting to represent a symbol that changed their life to becoming that hero themselves is incredibly inspiring. Drake's journey in this episode also carries to me the very timely theme that you can still draw inspiration to be better from a piece of entertainment, even if some of the people who were involved in it turn out to be...
I'll film this finale if it kills me, and everyone on this roof!
Problematic. That might be me digging way too deep into it though, but I couldn't get out of my head. But if you think that's the deepest I'm gonna dig, you all know there's one more moment we need to talk about.
You want grim and gritty, huh? Happy to play the part.
Oh my God!
I know some people saw this reveal coming, but I sure as heck didn't. Although, in hindsight, the chainsaw should have been a clue that this was Negaduck. But I have so many questions. Like, what is he? Before, Negaduck was from another universe. Is that still the case? Was he trying to live a new life of glory undercover? Or is he now truly a disgruntled actor who's going to seek revenge on the person who took away his perceived comeback and biggest fan? Whatever he is, I also get the feeling that the journey with this Negaduck is going to be a bit more complicated than the one in the original series. From what I remember, and going by the few episodes I rewatched in the last year, Negaduck was pure, unquestionable evil with no complexity or tragedy. For wealth and power, there was no puppy he wouldn't kick. And he didn't care who he hurt. In fact, he seemed to enjoy that. But I don't think that's the case this time. Oh, it seems like it for a bit there, and he definitely goes way too far to get what he wants, but let's go back to Launchpad's intervention. Launchpad shares his admiration in a deep and surprisingly eloquent way for Launchpad.
He knows a lot about this one thing.
And it definitely has an effect on Jim, and the episode makes sure we know that. He hesitates to continue on his rampage, he shows remorse for what he's doing, he drops his weapon, and even risks his life to save Launchpad from an explosion. Why? Because Drake reminds him of what Launchpad is. His fan. All this time, Jim has been craving recognition for his work, to preserve his legacy as this TV superhero, and in that scene, Launchpad tries to give that, show how important this persona Jim helped create is to him. In that moment, Jim seems to have a moment of reflection at what he's become. And while his ultimate fate is to give in to his darker desires, blame Drake for his failures, and even claim he turned his fan against him, there was a moment, although brief, of perspective and self-sacrifice for the sake of someone else. For the most part, the villains in Ducktales have been great at being fun, entertaining, and even threatening, but they've been far from morally complex. That's not really what the show is out to do. And while I'm not holding my breath that Jim will become anything more than a chainsaw-wielding and delightfully despicable psychopath, there's definitely the possibility that there could be more to his downfall in the future. The return of Negaduck is an amazing moment of fan service and a marvelous twist on expectations with Jim Cummings' casting, but with or without the nostalgia goggles on, he has the makings of possibly the most complex villain in the DuckTales reboot. In the meantime though, overall, The Duck Knight Returns is a daring debut for DuckTales' Darkwing Duck. It's also kind of remarkable that in a season with so many incredible character introductions and series-changing moments, to be the one to stand out among all of them, and given that this is by far the most popular and beloved episode of Season 2, that's what The Duck Knight Returns managed to accomplish. If you know Darkwing Duck, it's a loving tribute and respectful reimagining of the Disney Afternoon's most well-remembered property, and if you don't know Darkwing Duck, it's an exciting introduction to some great new characters to the DuckTales reboot, and a commentary of sorts on how we perceive reboots and adaptations, and how media and the connections we make through it can possibly change someone's life. It's one of those cartoon episodes that's really going to be left up to many interpretations. I've heard a lot of them over the past few months. In the times I've rewatched this episode and sat and thought about it, I only found more meaning and depth in between all the fun slapstick, exceptional voice work, dynamic animation and set pieces, and pure excitement about what this could mean for the future of the show. You probably don't need me to tell you how good this episode is, but it's really an episode that deserves all the attention it gets, and very much worthy of analysis. It's likely going to become one of those episodes people show their friends to get them into the show, or just to show how good the DuckTales reboot can be. The wait was totally worth it, and the potential for the future is incredibly exciting. TLDW, this episode's great. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.